welcome to episode 1 of FPL Weekly. My name is Johnny, and this is my wonderful co-host, Ches. We're going to call him Ches. Real name Joseph, but you're definitely not going to have to worry about that. How's it going, Ches? Excited for the old FPL Weekly?
I feel like we are giving back to the FPL community. Me and Johnny suck it for all it's worth, and this is our way of giving it back. So don't know whether anyone's going to pick up any helpful tips, hints. The way that our season went, myself and Johnny's season, it was. He says that I copied him, but I think that he copied me, and. So we've always been
you've been copying me for a good 10 years. I mean, put it into perspective, everyone, right? So Ches came 50k this year, and roughly, and I was roughly 100k. So he beat me, which was very upsetting. It is the first time he's beaten me since ever.
Yeah,
true or false?
and true. So you need to stop copying me and maybe just go on your own.
So what's really happened is Ches has kind of been my accomplice, and I've kind of, nurtured him along on my FPL journey, and kind of Robin overtook Batman, if you like, which is quite upsetting, but I'm also quite proud of him. So I like to think that I'm better. Ches now thinks that he's better, obviously, because he won. But yeah, more importantly, we love FPL. We talk about it most days. So we thought, you know what? Let's do
It's
a pod.
it's not probably most days. It is every day.
It's
And to be honest, we're talking now in the first week in June. It's just been the FA Cup final. And the reason why we're starting this is because we are bored off our tree.
Correct.
So
It's filling the void because we missed football. Yeah. It's been literally a week. And we've had the FA Cup final. It's still not enough to fill the void. So enjoy it. So we're gonna do, hence the name FPL Weekly. We're gonna do one every week. Obviously throughout the season, it's gonna be a bit more in depth. We're gonna talk loads about transfers, differentials, strategies, roughly what our plans are. Waiting for team news, loads of stuff. But obviously at the moment it'll be more. We're going to do a review of the season, and I'm going to hand you over to Ches in just a second, who's going to kind of go over the review and what happened and how the game kind of changed and how it got. It was so interesting this year, so interesting in terms of the World Cup and how we got an extra wild card and. But we're going to be doing it every week, like I said. And at the moment, it's going to start quite quiet because obviously it's summer now. We're just going to do a little FPL review, and then next week we're going to talk a little bit about prices. So because we're bored and we love it, we've talked about the key players this year and what we think their price is going to be next year. And what the main reason we did that, one, was a bit of a laugh, but two, let's say we think Haaland's going to be 14 million. If he comes in at 15 and a half, we're going to go, probably avoid. If he comes in at 12 and a half, well, he's straight in. So it gives us an idea of how we would price a player and therefore who we see as a potential bargain or not. So, I'll hand you over to Ches, and he'll talk about how the season went and how it changed drastically.
Yeah, so as Johnny said, 50k-ish for myself. I felt that was, given that the effort that I put in, I felt like that was kind of like an effort A and a grade B, if that makes any sense. I think given the amount of players that there are, like me and Johnny have been playing, I think if I go back on my previous, I've been playing since 2010, which is crazy.
I mean, I don't think the records went back to. I was doing this at school on my lunch break, 100% secondary school. So, and it was definitely Fantasy Premier League. So I don't know how far back their records go, but I've been doing it since year 9, 10. So,
I remember when we both went to university together, and I remember a certain Marlon Harewood for a QPR who I used to have up front, and I don't know about, obviously we didn't really take it seriously back then, but so top 50k, I've got similar results in the past, however, less people have been playing, like the more people have been playing, the more engaged you need to be in order to get that top 50k. And I think me and Johnny would both agree that, you know, top 50k is what we're aiming for. You know, I think
Yeah.
that basically means that you're going to win mini leagues. You know, you're going to
Yeah,
win mini leagues.
I agree. We're both good. We both know what we're doing. But to put that into perspective to everyone watching, like there's 11.5 million FPL players. So now, yes, a lot of them aren't engaged, but that's kind of their own problem. The fact is there's 11.5 million. So that would mean that, just quickly do my math, 115,000. Anyone in the top 115,000 is the top 1% of all FPL players. So I just snuck in there. Ches got in there easily, so he'd be in the top 0.5% of FPL players. So I get it. Like I say, some people give up, some people aren't very engaged, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, you know, it's similar to golf. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. This is going to sound strange, but you know, only 20% of golfers get 18 handicap or lower. So a lot of 18 handicappers are like, I'm so bad at golf. You're not really. In the grand scheme, I always say that's my lessons, is that you're not really. So it's the same with this. Is we're very critical of ourselves. I'm a bit disappointed with 100k, to be honest, with the amount of time I spend on it. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm still in the top 1%. You know, you put 100 people in a room, and on average, I'm the one that comes out on top. So, but what I'm saying is, there's obviously, what would we say of those 11.5 million are engaged? Would you say 20%, something like that, 30%?
Yeah, yeah. And you've
But
got
it's the
all those
casuals as
teams.
well, isn't it?
Yeah,
There are the
you've got all
casuals
them.
who just
You've got all them teams that go out for the 1 week win as well. So
yeah.
you know, so yeah. So
Yeah.
anyhow, so yeah, I felt it was a kind of like a grade B season in my opinion, and I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a map out of how it kind of went from my point of view. So everyone's template, and by the way, when we talk about template, me and Johnny's team won't be far off template. We are quite routine players, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. And
For anyone
you
that
know,
doesn't know, template basically means the highest owned player. So template effectively means the highest 4 or 5 owned defenders, the highest 5 owned midfielders, the highest 3 owned forwards. That's your template team. The good thing about template is there's a reason it's template. E.g., there's a reason a lot of people are picking those players. But at the same time, if your template players don't do very well, you can't gain rank. So it's a risk going without them. So we'll talk about it in a minute, but I went without Kane at the end and it cost me. But there's also an upside, because if you take on a Haaland and everyone captains him and he does nothing and your differential captain does something, your upswinging rank could be massive. So when we talk about template, which we're going to talk about, we're going to use that word so much in the next few weeks and months. That basically means the most popular team people are choosing, e.g. your Haalands, e.g. your Rashfords,
yeah,
etc.
yeah, definitely. So the template was heavy at the back. That was the template. And if I take myself back to my first game, I had Trent, Cancelo, James, Robertson. That is heavy at the back. And
Yeah,
then there was times within the, you know, getting towards the end of the season where my defence was worth, you know, maybe a Trent and James put together, and 4 players would account to that money. So it really did flip. I think we can safely say that plan was not something that worked out well, and I would
definitely
be
agree.
be very surprised if the template was similar next season.
It's
I
going to be
think,
very interesting because you're right. At the start of the season, everyone went big on defence. And do I regret it? Not really, because, you know, that was the whole chat. You know, the whole chat was you have to have Trent because he's good value. And that was based on his price and how many points he delivered, right? So Trent was 7.5, and the amount of points he's been producing the past few seasons, you know, it's effectively your points per pound, basically. Points
yeah,
per pound, Trent at 7.5 million was good value. We couldn't predict that Liverpool would have a bit of an offish season. Do you know what I mean? So, do I regret it? No, because it made sense at that time. We did the research. Everyone in the know was going big at the back because they were all good value. Everyone had Cancelo. He's a class player. He got forward. He was one of the most nailed players at the time. Obviously, Pep Roulette let us down again, like it always does. But, you know, do I regret it? No. But it's so fascinating to see next year whether it's happening again or whether it's a balance. It'll probably be a bit of a balance. I think people
yeah,
will have kind of Trent, maybe one other, like, I don't know, a Reece James or something if he's fit. or a
I,
Chilwell,
I think
possibly.
like a very much a quote that I started to say to Johnny and probably to myself because no one else would listen, which was that if the fixtures are good, defenders are great. If the
Yeah,
form is good, attackers are great.
yeah,
And that's where I started to go. And there's certain people that I never went in on. So someone like Watkins, for example, I didn't
yeah.
go in on him. And I look back and I'm really disappointed at myself because the form was there for him.
Yeah,
The fixtures might not have been, but the form was.
but it's tough
And
because then like, there's so many bandwagons, and some are good and some are bad. I would use the Grealish example of a bandwagon that didn't work out. So,
yeah,
some of
yeah,
these bandwagons you take on, like we took on Watkins, we went for Havertz instead, which really didn't pay off. Um, and that was a regret, yes. But then, like I say, some people go with the bandwagon, and sometimes, like the Grealish thing, that doesn't pay off. He had a
mm,
good season, obviously, and he was doing well. But after people brought him in, he did nothing at
yeah,
all for the rest of the season. So it's tough.
yeah,
Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. You just have to go
yeah,
with. I think a key thing I'll mention, and I'll keep mentioning it a lot, is play your own game. And all of the people that do well say the same thing. Play your own game. Go with what you want. Yes, there's data and stuff to help, but at the end of the day, you've got to go with your gut feeling. And it's important to have some players in there that are a bit different. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. But I think a mostly template team is good, but I don't think you can go fully template. Otherwise, you'll just coast your way to 500k. I think
yeah.
you've got to have the odd punt here or there. So
Yeah, definitely. So then we had World Cup in around kind of game week 18. I think that was the first one back, maybe. So that was a big change for this year, massive change. I mean, I'd say it was a big change, but equally the COVID years that we've lived through the last couple of years, they've messed up FPL so much that I don't feel like we've had a normal year in a long time. So I am actually looking forward to that normal year next year. And I think something that I want to talk about at the end is going to be rule change. Wonder whether we do
yeah,
see any rule changes. But anyway, so game week 18 was the first one back, 19, and then I ended up having to wild card in game week 20. I remember doing it on the side of a road on a
I remember you
Friday
were panicking.
on
You're like Johnson. I've got 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes. What do I do? Do I
on,
play with wildcard? Do I not play with wildcard? Just
on a
quickly for those that don't know, obviously when the World Cup was on, you got unlimited transfers, so it was basically like an added wildcard. So going into game week 18, we could pick whatever team we wanted, basically.
Yeah, and I made some. Basically, what I did was I made some errors, and what I did was I picked players that were really good value in teams with really good fixtures who weren't always nailed on to play. So, for
Yeah,
example, Chalobah. I picked Chalobah for Chelsea in his
that
defence,
was unlucky
and
though. He was
uh,
playing so much.
and he was playing so much.
Ben Trelling went for him as well. He's very, very good at this game, and he went for him, and he was like, oh, he has to play because he's played the last 10, and then all of a sudden, typical, you put him in, and he just doesn't start playing. So there's a huge element of luck involved as well, obviously.
And I remember I had injuries to like I've just got my team up now. So my defence on game week 19 was Trippier, who was a mainstay in everyone's team.
Yeah, he was a template player.
Walker, who then couldn't get in the team after the World Cup. Like Pep when Pep had like a midlife crisis, and he's got got rid of Cancelo. He got rid. He wasn't playing Walker. He wasn't playing Diaz. He was playing Bernardo Silva at left back. It was just crazy, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
so yeah. So Walker, I had Patterson who got a really bad injury. Chalobah, and then I also had Robinson
Yeah.
for Fulham, who was risking a yellow card, and he actually ended up getting one, and he was and he
Yes,
was
that was
banned,
it. That was
and he was
so funny.
banned. It was
That was
banned.
so
So
funny because you played your wild card and you brought in Robinson, who's
yeah,
one yellow card away. I was like, do you realise he's one yellow card away from a ban? I'm like, oh my
yeah,
god, it's so
yeah.
funny.
So
So yeah,
anyway,
you basically had a lot of fires. What we call by a lot of fires to put out is 6, 7 issues in your team that couldn't get patched up without taking a big hit. And obviously in this game, we never really want to take a big hit because it never usually pays off. So
no. no.
You almost were forced into your wild card, I'd say.
Yeah.
You kind of had
Well,
to do it.
I made some errors. I made some errors, and
Yeah, but there's bad
like
luck in there. There was bad luck in
the
there as well.
reason why I say errors was, I could have gone Thiago Silva over Chalobah, who, you know, but I'm looking at value and stuff, and at that time I had Haaland, Darwin, Kane, and Salah, and Rashford, and Mason Mount. So I had multiple high value players up further up the pitch. So the reason why I went so weak at the back was because of that. So anyway, swings and roundabouts. I had to take my wild card, and in all seriousness, that was where the game changed. I took my wild card when there was a massive fixture swing towards Arsenal, Man United, Newcastle, and I also started to look at Brighton, because we knew that their fixtures were going to were going to mount up. So moving kind of towards the back end, the last kind of third of the season, the template for me started to be teams. So we were focusing on teams. So teams who had much more fixtures than everyone else to play. So Arsenal had multiple fixtures to catch up on. Man United had multiple, and then Brighton was a big one. Obviously, City, because if you've got a player who's having a double, that's how it worked out. So what really helped me was that when everyone was then wildcarding in game weeks, I'm going to say 28, something like that.
Yeah, that one I did mine. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I think it was like my team, I think we talked about it at the time, and we said my team wasn't far off and it just basically meant I needed to do lots and lots and lots of planning. So, which was mentally hard, because
Yeah.
I couldn't go for them kind of 2-3 week punts, but those 2-3 week punts don't tend to pay off. Like, they really don't. So
yeah, I played mine in 26.
yeah. So I really think that it was it was a big change. So final evaluations, I'd say grade B overall.
I think that's a bit harsh. Is 50k your best ever result?
No, I've got. I think my best ever was 12k, but it was around about 4 years ago, the year just before COVID, so 18, 19, 12k.
I've had a good year as well that year then.
I think I just fluked it, mate. To be honest,
Wow. Okay.
I think so that I'm going to say that was the first year that I started engaging in content, and because the thing is once content started being created, then that's where this whole thing mushroomed out, and and I think obviously that then created competition between myself and yourself, and then the COVID year was a big one, so then and God, we all did rubbish on that year. If anyone did well on that year, they were well done, because it was such a mess. I remember captaining like a Burnley player who didn't end up playing 1 minute because both games got cancelled. So it was a nightmare.
I'm just quickly going through your rank, and I think so. I'm pretty sure there was your best one. I think was 16-17, where you were 31k, but I think it's your second best ever.
Yeah.
So, all I'll say, I think B's a bit harsh. I think 50k is a bit better than B.
Okay.
But that's good. At least you're kind of. I get it. It's good. It's ambitious. You want to do better next year, but I think B is a bit mean. A couple of things I was going to say when you're talking about players that are risky, like Chalobah. I did a similar thing with Badiashile, and the main reason I did it, the narrative behind it, was he wasn't included in the Champions League squad because they signed so many players and they couldn't fit them all in. So I thought, well, if he's not been fitted in the Champions League squad, well, it makes sense to play him in the league all the time. And at the time, he was getting games. Potter seemed to like him, and he's not in the Champions League squad. So you'd think he's one of the first names on the team sheet, and he's a lot cheaper. So
the
that was the narrative,
and
it didn't work.
that stunk. See, that stunk for me, because if he's one of the first names on the team sheet, why is he not in the Champions League squad?
I get that, but then they had to include Felix. They had to include Mudryk because they paid 90 million for him, and there was another one. I think it was it Cucurella maybe because they paid 65 million for him, and they only could add 3, as we know from Football Manager. You can only add 3, so I felt like unfortunate to miss out, if you know what I mean, because they could only put 3. It's like when you do it on FM and you have to apologise to the player that missed out. You want to pick them, but you haven't got room for them, and you've got to write them an apology. So that anyway. So I won't be doing that next year. I don't think. I would pay the extra 0.5 million to, like you mentioned earlier, to go for a Thiago. It's not worth the 0.5 million to have a player that's not nailed, and then you've got a player coming on from your bench who you don't want. So I think pay the little bit of extra to go for the nailedness. You know, a good example this year was Dunk. We know he's utterly nailed, and he's not quite as attacking as a Purvis, but he's nailed. He plays
in the long run. You look at the points that those nailed people get rather than those flashy people, and then I think you can make those kind of more rogue choices. But anyway, I think the big one for you, massive one, start of the season, there's no Salah.
Yeah, that's funny. So it was so interesting because at the start of the season, everyone was like, have to go Salah. First name on the team sheet. I'm not anti-Salah. I think he's an amazing player. I think he's one of the top players we've seen in the Premier League era. Like, really is bang up there. I think he's underrated. I think he's underappreciated. Anyway, he's a fabulous player. But every player has a price, right? And I get it. I get why he's a great option. He's a midfielder that should really be a striker. He's on penalties. I get it. But I just looked at it. Your fixtures were okay, and he was 13 million. And I just thought, do I really need him? And I think it was the end of not this season, the end of last season, he seemed, in my opinion, to show a bit of a decline. And look, in hindsight, obviously, it's probably just a few bad games. But it was part of the contract issue, wasn't it? He looked like he down tools a bit. Was he the same player that he used to be? So, and then people saying, look, I have to have Salah. So do I go Kane or Haaland? Well, I went Salah. I'd rather go Kane than Haaland. And then I actually save a little bit of money as well, because I believe it was it 11 and 11 and a half? Were they? I think
12.
Kane.
Kane was
11 and a half.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were cheaper.
Both of them.
They're both cheaper than they're both cheaper than 13. So that gave me a little bit more money to go up to like a Martinelli or whoever I wanted. So it was an interesting one, and it paid off mostly. Salah started the season pretty poorly. Everyone said I was a lunatic for going without him, but it didn't really matter. You switched straight away, I think. Haaland played West Ham, looked amazing, scored twice.
I started the season with Kane and Salah, and the second that the deadline passed, I switched over from Kane to Haaland. And the main reason why I did it was Kane had a really good first game fixture, and Haaland's was middle of the road. But then I think Haaland's second fixture was Bournemouth at home, and I knew. And do you know when you know someone's going to go berserk? I don't know.
I think people needed that validation that Haaland not was the real deal, but that he could, all the kind of usual doubts. Is he going to come to the Prem and do anything? Is he going to suit City style of play? Blah, blah, blah. I think once they saw that West Ham game, everyone was like, okay, we've got a freak on our hands.
I had it. As I say, the 1 minute after the deadline, I made the transfer.
What you did well, and we'll talk a lot about it going forward, is you beat the price rise.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, about 2 or 3 in the morning, every night when the game's live, there's price changes. So obviously, if you play it as well, it goes up. If you play it as badly, it gets partly if they do well, and no one actually knows the exact algorithm, right? But partly if they do well or badly, and partly if they're transferred in or not. Now Haaland took off, and I think Kane blanked. So there's FPL predictions, basically. There's price rise predictions that you can look at, and the prediction was Kane goes down, Haaland goes up. So what Ches did is he did it straight away to be able to do it. Because if he'd have waited the next day, I'm sure it happened as well. Kane went down 0.1 and Haaland went up 0.1. So you wouldn't have been able to do it by 0.2. So you kind of what we call beat the price rise, which is doing it early enough to beat the price rise. Now that has its downsides as well. Ches was clever in that regard, but its downsides is he was locked in straight away. His move's done with a week to spare. So, if there's another one of his players got injured or X, Y, Z, or I don't know, he
I
just
just,
needs
I
to
just
link
felt, I
in with
just
a
felt,
different player.
and I knew full well the only thing that I had to avoid was a Haaland injury in that first week,
Yeah,
because I
you
knew
did the
I
right
need.
move. It's just it has its going early in general has its negatives. Most of the time we leave it to the last possible minute, and I've told you that for
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
But
I've
in
never.
this
That was the
situation, you
only
had to do it.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the only time I've ever done it, and it was because I knew I wanted it, but I knew that anyway. I think it was a validated move at the time, but anyway, we will digress,
yeah.
yeah. So I think that's everything I want to talk about. This one,
Yeah,
I
I
think
just really
that's that.
quickly want to talk about my wild card.
Yeah,
I was
sorry.
planning on playing it a bit later, but because the season was so different in terms of rearranged games, doubles, trebles. Talked about trebles. That was quite funny. We won't go into that one. Right? We won't go
So
there.
tiny bit of background. Johnny is a season ticket holder at Brighton, and so the phrase of season ticket holder would mean that you're a dedicated fan, and that dedicated fan was telling me for weeks that Brighton are
Strong rumours.
guaranteed,
Strong rumours.
there was a guarantee
Never
of a
said
treble.
guaranteed. No,
There was
never said guaranteed.
there was
I said
Elliot.
guaranteed. I said guaranteed double, possible treble.
There was an Elliot guarantee on that,
No,
and
fake news.
and
Fake
I
news.
took and I took that back to the shop, and they said, "Absolute do what."
Where's your receipt? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh.
I was left early doors
Yeah.
up, and don't get me started on the keepers. Wow, I had some trouble with keepers this year.
So remember
That
we
is,
played. We both had Sanchez in, and so the first week I played my wild card, Sanchez made sense because Brighton had a lot of fixtures, blah blah blah. And as the first game out of nowhere he got dropped, and I was like, oh my god, I only just played my
yeah,
wild card, and Sanchez got dropped. And in the
yeah,
end, actually, to be fair, we took a pump of steel.
yeah,
In the fact that we thought that he'd be locked in, and he was locked in for the rest of the season at a very cheap price. Really quickly, one we didn't predict price was Steele. He's a really interesting one to keep an eye on because Sanchez is done and dusted, mate. We're going to sell him by all accounts. His Brighton career is
yeah.
over. He refused to be in the squad, so by all accounts, we're going to sell him. So it'd be very interesting to see whether we replace Sanchez with like a worldy goalkeeper, or whether he keeps faith in Steele. I think he really likes Steele. I think he likes the way he plays at the back. Long story short, if Steele is our number one, he won't be more than 4.5.
No.
He won't be more than 4.5.
And I'll second that. I was watching so the Brighton CEO, and I always think this, like I tiny bit of background as well. I work in football, so when you kind of have when a CEO is given a nickname to a player, as in Steely, when you referring to Jason Steele as the keeper, calling him Steely, then that's someone who you're fairly close with. You're going to be, and he's the CEO on. It was on the High Performance podcast, and I kind of, my ears pricked up. I looked at it, I was like, oh wow, and you're not gonna drop the number one to bring in the number two to then, and the number two does well, by the way, and
Yeah, he
then
did do well. He did nothing wrong.
he's done well. He's done nothing wrong for them then to get another keeper. And apart from going to Europe, like the only thing that I can think of that you'd do is that you'd buy a younger keeper who may push. I think there's talk of the Liverpool one. There's the
Kelleher,
talk
yeah.
of the
That's what I was about to say. There's rumours of Kelleher,
talk
yeah.
there's talk of you getting Kelleher, which
Mm.
I, I don't know. I'm a Liverpool fan, so I just don't know why Keller would leave Liverpool bench to sit on Brighton's bench. So
Yeah.
if he's going to go,
Mm.
he's going to go to the Championship
But I think
and
he
move
may he
up.
may break in at some point, though, possibly.
I mean, the
Um,
only thing is that you've got loads of games. Like we saw it with Ortega at the start of the season. He will have been guaranteed FA Cup, League Cup. Done,
Yeah.
dusted, guaranteed. You're not going to be dropped for the final. You're not going to be dropped for anything. There's a guarantee. And if you do well on the back of that, you could get an improved contract. You could get a move away. You know, there's your exposure, is those two competitions. And if Keller, you know, I doubt that Keller might get guaranteed Europa League from Liverpool next year. He could get guaranteed, you know, and I think it's just super important that you get guaranteed, including the final, including the semi, because that's where the eyes are on that fixture. You know, there was how many people would have been watching that Manchester derby yesterday? So, you know, by the way, if I'm Brentford, who, you know, Raya is gone. Raya, you know, that's really interesting, by the way. You know, keep an eye on that keeper.
Today, actually. I read about that today because they valued him at 40 million. He's got 1 year left. The agents come out today and said Brentford are pricing him out, and what he's basically threatened is if Brentford price him out, we're leaving for free next year.
Yeah. So
that's what the agent said today.
Well, I think they said at the end of the season they were talking about. I heard Brentford manager. Oh my God, help me!
Thomas Frank.
Thomas Frank was basically said that there's one player up for sale, and that's David Raya. Yeah, and so he's the only one who's up for sale. So, and he is.
I could see him going. I could see him going to like a Spurs or something like that.
Yeah, he's going to go to Spurs. Well, Lloris has said today he's gone. So Lloris is gone. So therefore, there's you know, David Raya goes to Spurs. He's 4.5, brilliant. Sign me up all day long. You know, and you know, even though Spurs' defense isn't good, but I don't know about anyone else FPL, but like keepers. I must admit, I've not enjoyed this year where I've been swapping and changing keepers. So I think that as of next year, I am going to be a bit of a sticker with a keeper, and I think we did that last year with Sanchez, you know. But yeah. Anyway,
so just really quick. No, just really quickly, and I'll finish it up. I did a walk on 26. It was the content creators they lured me into it. It became apparent when all the fixtures came out that we had to get through at that stage of the season. We had to get through a bench boost. We had to get through a blank game week, and we had 2 doubles. And all of a sudden, all of the fixtures came out, and it was like, oh, hang on. If I play a wild card, which I did in 26, I can use the doubles of the Brentford players. Remember, the Brentford went ballistic with fixtures. Captain Tony, he got 26. 106 that week, so we're making the most of the doubles. Then we get through the blank. I had 11 players for the blank. That was where Saka went mad, but everyone captain Kane. And then I had loads and loads of players for the bench boost. So basically, I played the wild card because it ticked every box. It covered me for the blank. It covered me for all the doubles. It just ticked every single box. And I just felt like I kind of had to play it. It covered me for everything. It was almost like a 1 chip that should have been 3 chips kind of chip, if you know what I mean. It was such a no-brainer for me to do it. And then I think we got a bit unlucky 1 week in that was the week I think Liverpool went mad. There was a week where I just played it and Salah and everyone and all the usuals went crazy, but I didn't have him in my wildcard team. And
that wasn't when they won 7-0, was it?
That was correct, yes.
Oh.
So that wasn't good. But anyway, I don't regret playing the wildcard at that time. The triple captain was interesting. You beat me there as well. I went Haaland early, and he didn't do much. But that was mainly, he went Rashford, and he got quite a bit more, I think. You got quite a bit more, but I basically wanted to play early. 1, I wanted to do it on Haaland because I just wanted to, because he was a freak at the time. And 2, because I wanted to save a lot of my chips, because there was so many chips that needed to be played. You didn't want to have the headache of thinking, oh, when am I going to play my triple captain as well? In hindsight, I could have been more patient with that. There was more opportunities later in the season to do it as well, because there's so many doubles.
I think that's something as well, that the better teams go further in competitions, which means that they have doubles later on in the season. And I think for me, those chips do not exist before Christmas. Those chips do not exist unless you've got Haaland at home to Luton and at home to, some freak that's the reason why it happens. But in the first half of the season, most game weeks there's no doubles really.
Yeah.
So those chips don't exist until the second half of the season for me.
Yeah, agree. Strategy is such an important thing, and it's something we're going to talk about so much in the upcoming season. Okay, cool. Great. Good. So just to review, quick review, obviously, I mean, if I'm honest, Jez was the only person that beat me pretty much, not blowing smoke up your ass, but I won a lot of my leagues. Peter, close mate of mine for a half decent sum of money, and won most of my leagues, and the only person I lost to was Jez, really. So I'm assuming you, look at your smug face, I'm assuming you pretty much cleaned up on most of your mini leagues, not like the 100,000 runners ones, but a lot of the mini leagues stuff.
Smashed up on those. I think we've got a slightly larger one that I came second in, that we're both in. Congratulations to Marco, who won that.
Marco,
yeah. Hopefully, good ways paying him out. His money he deserves.
It's like he's listening. I got a feeling he might not be. He's probably too busy on the challenge tour. But anyway.
So
good. All right. Yeah. Cool. No, we'll wrap it up. Just quickly, a little bit of admin. We've got a Instagram page, FPL Weekly 1. Please feel free to follow that. There's going to be loads of stuff on there. We're going to screenshot our teams every week. There's going to be all sorts on there. Expected data. I mean, God, you name it. Predicted lineups. You name it. It's going to be on there. And more importantly, on there, we have the link for the YouTube channel, FPL Weekly. So that's the easiest way of you getting through to our YouTube channel, where obviously you'll be watching this video, hopefully. So if you can subscribe to the channel, that'll be brilliant. That's the way that we help it to grow. The more of you that do that, the better. And if you can please give us a follow on FPL Weekly 1, that'd be super. And that's about it.
Thank you so much.
Good. Cheers, mate. Yep. See you. We'll do, like I say, next week we'll do a little bit of the key players, our price predictions for next year. The week after that, the fixtures get released. So we'll talk about basically which teams have got the easiest runs at the start, because I'm Chez as well, but I'd say me especially, very much a fixture person. So we'll be looking at who's got the easiest fixtures to start the season and who then would be targeting in our first draft. So good.
Might be in Glasgow, mate. So, but,
do they have Wi-Fi there?
Yeah, maybe not.
Take your iPad, mate. I'll ring you. It might not be quite on that date, but yeah.
You don't ring me.
Nip one in before you go, and then you'll nip one in when you come back. But yeah, good. All right, buddy. Good stuff. See you next time. Thanks for watching.